And here is the Writer's Almanac for Sunday, the 11th of October, 2020. It was on this day, 1975, Saturday Night Live had its premiere. George Carlin was the host. Michael O'Donoghue was on the show. John Belushi, Janice Ian, and Billy Preston played music. Paul Simon made an appearance. It's the birthday of novelist Elmore Leonard, born New Orleans, 1925. Right out of college, got a job at an ad agency, so he'd get up and write every morning at 5 a.m. before he went into the office. Wrote some pulp westerns, then crime fiction, went on to write Get Shorty, Be Cool, Rum Punch. Elmore Leonard, who said, if it sounds like writing, rewrite it. 1944 on this day, the movie To Have and Have Not premiered, based on the novel To Have and Have Not by Ernest Hemingway, which was a hard novel for Hemingway to write. Took him about 4 years. He'd been accused of being politically apathetic in the 1930s, and so he tried to engage with the politics of Cuba and Key West. But the book was generally panned by critics. Philip Rov in the Partisan Review said, in transcending his political indifference, he has not, however, at the same time transcended his political ignorance. Book came out in 1937. 1939, he sold the film rights for $10,000. It was a big hit, but it almost didn't get made because it portrayed Cuba in an unflattering way. And back in those days, during the days of the Batista regime, the U.S. and Cuba were allies. So it had to be rewritten. And William Faulkner, who was working on the Warner Brothers lot, came in and rewrote it, changed the setting from Cuba to Martinique, combined some characters, dropped some other characters, rewrote the dialogue. Hemingway and Faulkner did not actually meet during the process of making the film, and neither of them was responsible for the most famous line in the film, uttered by Lauren Bacall. It was improvised by the director, and she did it so well that Faulkner wrote it into the screenplay. You know how to whistle, don't you, Steve? You just put your lips together and blow. It's the birthday of Eleanor Roosevelt, born in New York City, 1884, who was First Lady longer than any other, and who, during her husband's presidency, campaigned hard on the issue of civil rights, which was not so popular back in the 30s and the 40s. Eleanor Roosevelt, who said, you wouldn't worry so much about what others think of you if you realized how seldom they do. It was on this day, 1962, Pope John XXIII convened the first session of the Second Vatican Council, Vatican II, trying to bring the Church up to date with the modern world, as a result of which Catholics were allowed to pray with Protestants and go to weddings and funerals in Protestant churches. Priests were encouraged to perform Mass facing the congregation rather than the altar, and to perform the Mass in languages other than Latin. Here's a poem for today by Grace Paley, entitled Family. My father was brilliant, embarrassed, funny, handsome. My mother was plain, serious, principled, kind. My grandmother was intelligent, lonesome for her other life, her dead children, silent. My aunt was beautiful, bitter, angry, loving. I fell among these adjectives in earliest childhood and was nearly buried with opportunity. Some of them stuck to me, others, finding me American and smooth, slipped away. Family by Grace Paley, from Begin Again, Collected Poems, published by Farrar Straus Giroux and used by permission here on the Writer's Almanac, funded by donations from listeners like you, now available on PRX for distribution by your local radio station. Be well, do good work, and keep in touch.